Hello, my name is Joey Garcia. I'm here with my group mates,
Katherine.
and
Ciel.
and we are doing a presentation about the negative impact of linguistic supremacy. So I guess to start us off, we have some questions about names as well as microaggressions and things that we're going to talk about. We're going to open up with assumptions about our names. So Ciel, do you want to start us off with that?
All right, so our first opening question is, has anyone made assumptions about you or anyone you know based on names alone? To start us off, we can have Joey.
Yeah, sure. So I guess a relevant story I have about assumptions based on my name is a time when I was in middle school. I was in, I think, eighth grade. I was in English class, and we had a substitute teacher at some point. And she comes in, she's like naming everybody off. My name's Joey. If you guys couldn't see, I should specify that like on my birth certificate it says Joey, not Joseph or Joe or anything. Like the name is actually just Joey. On like the roll sheet, the substitute teacher would have read Joey, but when she got to my name, as she was reading people's names off, she said Joseph, and I just don't respond to that. Like it's not my name. I've never been called that by anybody. And she keeps saying Joseph, and I'm just like twiddling my thumbs, like it's just not clicking. That's my name. One of my friends has to speak up for me. My friend Lewis. He says his name is Joey. At that point, I turn around, I look at her, and she's like, "Your name is Joey." I'm like, "Yeah," and she's like, and she like kind of scoffs. I don't know. There's just this like disapproval in her face, and she tells me in a courtroom, "Would you rather be called Joey or Joseph?" And then she's like, "Or Joe." I look at her and I'm like, "Joey," and she's like, "What? Well, that's not very professional." She makes some remark about like how it's not like Joey isn't professional enough or whatever. And my friend Lewis has to specify on his birth certificate it says Joey, and she's like, "Oh." And she just moves on, goes on to the next person's name. I don't know. That's my experience. I wouldn't say it's invalidating. Well, I mean, I guess inherently it kind of is, but like I didn't really feel bad about it. It's just like I didn't even register Joseph. It's just not. I'm not gonna let this old woman change my perspective on my own name. It was just pretty funny that my classmates, my friends stepped in and they're like, "Hey, it's just not Joseph."
That's so unprofessional.
It is like a substitute teacher. Come on. So yeah, if anyone else has any stories, anything similar.
I can go next.
Sure.
So my last name is Gutierrez, which means I have a double R, and it gets changed a lot in just the way it's pronounced, just so it'll be easier to pronounce for somebody that speak other languages. And when I was younger, I was embarrassed. It's hard to pronounce for that many. It was less common. Like I would go dentist, doctor, anything like that, and it was just not pronounced correctly. Yeah, like when my name was called, it was sometimes is that me? I kind of had to question it, and then I was like, oh yeah, they're just not pronouncing it correctly. And like you said, I kind of would move on from it, but I should have thought more of it, I guess, to consideration that you have to speak up for yourself like your classmates did for you, and just kind of repeat yourself. It's going to take a few times, but it's required. And it wasn't until I reached university when I met even more cultures and realized other people had names that I couldn't pronounce, but it took them telling me how to pronounce their name, practicing it, for me to know how to pronounce their name. So it's just asking and the other person telling you and just comprehending that this is their name and you cannot take their identity from them by changing their name. Yeah, I know that there will always be names I won't be able to pronounce the first time, but it really has helped me know the importance of asking for the correct pronunciation. And I know now that my come from, and I'm now proud of my last name and how it's supposed to be pronounced. Yeah, that's my story.
Thank you for your experience. I completely agree that, maybe you're not going to get a name right every time, but especially living in somewhere like Davis, I mean, it means a lot just to like try to get it right, and make the effort to like know someone's name. Because you're right, you can't really get to know someone. I think we saw a video. You can't really get to know someone if you're not even going to get to know their name, like how they conduct and identify themselves.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Sorry. Like the fact that like, how do you expect, Joey brought up, how do you expect someone to like respond to that if you're not even like making the effort to get their name right or try to learn how to pronounce it,
It's like a baseline respect. And I guess that ties back to... Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, go for it.
I guess like I said respect, and that made me think of like linguistic supremacy, you know, people thinking that like their language deserves more respect over another, or like one pronunciation or one like way of speaking is like superior than another.
Yeah.
And I guess it all ties into how our names are a way of like sort of beating out that linguistic supremacy, because at the end of the day, even if you're not going to learn another language or another culture, like you at least have to, you know, accept how someone wants to be identified as, you know, and make an effort to do that. You know, that's like our first step to beating linguistic supremacy and acknowledging the negative impacts. Sorry if I cut anyone off. Yeah.
That's a good story. Wait, Catherine, did you have a story, or did you want to?
No, you can go ahead and tell yours.
I guess my story is, I have a lot, but for my birth name, on my birth certificate it says Selena, but I don't typically go by that because I don't like it. Like, it's very Hispanic sounding, and my family's not that like at all. Like, I'm literally Afghan, I'm Cambodian, two different cultures mixed up, and my dad's the one that named me, but he was like obsessed with the singer, but it's spelled completely different and it does no correlation. Like, no one has ever said like, oh, you named after the singer, or like named after like whatever.
Yeah.
Instead, like, I got like made fun of for being compared to Selena Gomez. Again, not the same spelling, completely different. And I have no like cultural ties to it. Like, I just dropped it. And at one point, like during Christmas, like he made a Christmas card with all our names on it, and he spelled my name wrong. And I was like, how do you, who named me, spell my name wrong? Like, you were the one who did all this.
Yeah.
So then, like, towards high school, I changed my name to Ciel, and it was literally from like a French class, like how in certain like language classes you have to like change your name to something more culturally relevant. That's another story. But this one kind of stuck because it has like the same letters of my original name. So I was like, oh, like, it's shorter, like I like it. It's not something super different. I'm not getting rid of the name. I'm just kind of upcycling it. I just did not like that name. And even coming to Davis, I'm glad that like there's a preferred name section, because that name is just ick for me.
Yeah. Thank you for your story.
Appreciate like, oh, sorry. But I really appreciate like anyone just trying to learn my name, and you know, I'll get like a lot of comments like, oh, like, how do you pronounce it? Because they will like, they're not gonna assume how to pronounce it, but like they'll just ask like, oh, like, it's a cool name, or like at least like you did something to change it. Like, you can always adjust, especially that you can tell people your background, and like it's an important step to respect like someone. You're referring to someone with that, like, as a title in a sense.
Yeah.
And it really just the first step into making new friends or introductions with people. So yeah, that's my story.
I think that's really relevant.
As an Asian student, I have experienced many microaggressions because of linguistic supremacy. For example, when I first had class abroad, almost all of my teachers and classmates around me were surprised that I could speak English fluently, and that surprised me for this. I felt uncomfortable about this at the beginning, and I didn't understand why they were so surprised, although they praised my English. I captured their potential ideas that Asian students usually cannot speak English well, which is essentially a denial of our ability to learn a language, especially English. In fact, many of my Asian classmates will face such situations as me. They were usually praised, "You do not speak like Chinese, you speak like a native speaker," or "Your English is better than many other Japanese." It seems that we receive many prizes, but as a whole group who are not English native speakers, we are under microaggression, so we certainly will feel uncomfortable for this kind of prizes. What's more, when I discussed this topic with my Chinese friends, she shared her experience of microaggression in school with me. Once in her law teacher's class, the law teachers insisted on calling the Chinese students Chinese names because she thinks their names have special meanings and calling their Chinese names is a kind of respect. However, my Chinese friend insisted that the teacher can just call her English name because it is easier to remember and it is obviously more convenient. They argued about it for quite some time. My Chinese friend told me that although the law teacher didn't have bad intentions, she still feels uncomfortable about it. Seems that the teacher's behavior was showing respect. But sometimes making a difference and treating students in different ways is kind of harmful. Actually, I used to often hear my Chinese classmates referred to as people from China by teachers in classes. It seems that they didn't even have a name in the classes. I also have similar experiences outside school. For example, when I go to luxury stores with my Asian or minority classmates, we are often ignored and get the cold shoulder when we ask the prices. This is because we speak English with a certain accent, which makes some shop assistants think that we are from a relative background area and have low consumption power.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Shifting into our focus then, we're going to talk about what experiences each of us have with linguistic supremacy, which is our main topic, and perhaps the negative impacts on it. To start us off again, Joey.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. First thing that I really think of, people in the United States, like all over the place, thinking that like English is like the official language of the country, when in reality it's just there is no official language. I guess you can come here and speak whatever language and get situated, start a business or whatever, maybe move somewhere where people speak language and learn English from there or don't, but like there is no expectation. The founding fathers had no expectation that people were going to like come here to learn English or come here and like be expected to learn English. It doesn't make sense to me why there's this linguistic supremacy, like preference for English. Every language in the United States is valid. English or Spanish or Mandarin or Arabic. You can speak whatever you like, and it's completely valid according to the law. I'm not sure where the cultural shift comes in.
Yeah, I agree. Like English became like that, like ideal language or like the standard. You shifted away from that. Like you tend to be like looked down on, or like whatever other language you decide to speak, like it's seen as inferior. Like, we see that a lot in school. Like personally, I worked during COVID in a program like with newcomers. All of the students only spoke Spanish and they were barely learning English. And during this time, like they had no support from like schools, obviously like their parents, because their parents themselves didn't know the language. For instance, I was helping 3 little boys who were like doing school through Zoom. All of their classes were in English. So they were just sitting there and they didn't know what the teachers were talking about. And the teachers would often like kind of like call their attention all the time and put them on the spot because they weren't paying attention. But it was kind of unfair to them because how did you expect them to be paying attention if they didn't even understand what was going on during that time? I saw like how it impacted them a lot. One of the little boys was like a 3rd grader who like didn't know how to read, and in the educational system, like, this is seen as like maybe like the little boy not wanting to learn, but that's just not the case. He just didn't have the resources.
Yeah.
Because there was no support, like for translating or anything of that sense. Personally, like Spanish was my first language. Again, like my parents only spoke Spanish, so I didn't have any support like going into school, like translating, like homework or things like that. Like I solely depended on like my teachers, and like, you know, my sisters who were older than me. I was like enrolled in ELD for like a few years, but like the teachers who were in charge of delivering those classes, again, only spoke English. So there wasn't really that connection or like that understanding. And they kind of like made you feel bad for not getting it, you know, and it took you a couple tries to like be able to like pronounce certain words. And even like now, like in a classroom setting, I always have that fear of like mispronouncing a word, or just, you know, like not using language professional enough, you know, or like sending emails to a professor. Like there's always that pressure that I'm not sounding like respectful in a way.
Yeah. Thank you for your story. And I had a lot of friends who were in ELD during like high school and stuff, and they all spoke perfect English. I don't know why any of them are in there. And like, to my knowledge, it was just the teachers that weren't like, you know, delivering the content properly. And I guess, you know, like you're saying, I mean, it definitely ties into the like supremacy, like the linguistic supremacy of English. You know, like if these teachers come into the classroom and they're not delivering the content like they should, and they have their bias, like just going in and teaching, you know, because why should a high schooler who's been speaking English their whole life be still in an ELD class? It just speaks to a systemic issue. So yeah, thank you so much for your story. I didn't mean to.
No, it's like depressing in a way.
It is.
I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand how someone who speaks predominantly English doesn't, you know, understand people who don't speak English and, you know, just speaking in one language, then like they're gonna understand. I feel like if you work in that setting, you should like pick up the different language practices and like, you know, if you're constantly getting students who speak one language, you would understand, you know, some words in that language. I don't understand. If you're constantly exposed to it, you would like, you know, at least try. But these teachers, I feel like, aren't trying to like relate or understand their students. And you know, every year it's like the same culture coming in, same. It doesn't have to be the same. It could be like any different, but it's not super different.
Yeah.
And you know, getting people who don't speak English. My mom came from Afghanistan, and she was put in like ELD classes in 6th grade. You know, coming straight from Afghanistan, no English whatsoever. But like, I'm surprised now she understands all the slang that we're talking about, and like she's using social media. She's, you know, familiarized herself with that. And I don't know, maybe because she wanted to, you know, escaping her family, going on the internet, MySpace, Facebook, all that stuff. So I don't know, maybe it's different, but like, because she had that privilege to have that, you know, like, oh, I want to learn English because I want to get more involved in like social media or like whatnot. But regardless, it's still like surprising and shocking that she used to be in ELD, and like I could never guess. Her language practices is just incredible. Maybe she had good teachers, maybe just different drive, but regardless, it's just depressing that like some teachers just don't care and like aren't supporting their students.
Yeah.
Unlike, I know my mom was like giving like a lot of credit to like her teachers, and she was like, yeah, like they gave us a lot of help, like they were always like helping us pronounce certain words, and like, you know, they would also give back their culture too, like, you know, like saying words, like saying curse words for instance in another language, like they would like trade and whatnot, but they wouldn't know. Stuff like that. And it's just like, you know, you want to build that like relationship with like your teachers, like, you know, a nice, comforting and open classroom where anyone can just share their experiences, especially coming from like a war-driven country. Like she was just like, yeah, like escaping the Taliban and all that. I'm just like, are you not like traumatized? Like you should just be like, no, it's just a normal like day for me. And I'm like, oh my god. But it's just like shocking because people just come from different backgrounds, and it's just like fearful in a way. And then they come here and they're just like, you know, raised in a different country, different practices. All of a sudden you got a big old scary person yelling at you in a different language, and you don't understand anything, you know? It's, dang.
That's a whole different fear.
Yeah.
On a sort of related note, I didn't, my parents don't speak Spanish, even though my parents don't speak Spanish, but I learned it when I went to school, basically with my friends and stuff. And the first words I learned in Spanish were the swears, were the bad words. Yeah. we trade bad words. Icebreaker.
Yeah, it's just, it really is. or like for me, I went to summer school and it was me learning like the Thai language for like from Thailand. And my teachers were straight up university students like my age, and I'm just shocked because like I went to Thailand 2 weeks ago and it was just scary because like I don't know, I only know how to read, but I don't know what I'm reading, like
Yeah.
I'm just getting by, and all that's running through my head was like how we as students in America, we just like harassing these teachers because we were teaching them the word squirrel, and they don't know how to roll their R's or like say they don't have Q or like a R sounding letter, so they were saying like different ways to say squirrel, and they would also toss that right back at us, and they'd be like, all right, say this word in Thai, and I'm like, I don't know, I can't do that. It's like that, like even though we're like two different age groups, we're still like using different language practices to like communicate. It doesn't have to be solely one language, like if anything, it was kind of like how that one child was like using both words and like like both languages in one sentence to like come up with something. That way the student's also benefiting, and like the person can also understand like, oh, like I'm also learning English too, like for instance in Thailand I would like there's a lot of pointing, but then I was like, I'm gonna like try to learn, but a lot of like, oh, I want that one, or like just pointing and then saying the word one, or like one version of, or whatever. It's just a lot of learning until like you like experience it yourself, like you're like being put into like a different country and you don't know any language. You're scared. Like I don't think I survive.
No, but not only that, just like the fact that like once you do start like learning the language, but you don't speak it like what is like seen as the correct way or like with an accent,
yeah,
people like automatically start making assumptions, and they kind of like see you as like less intelligent. But what they don't see is like a lot of the times like those people like when speaking in their own like ethnic or like native tongue, like they're super intelligent. Like I saw it with like my mom, like she was like really into reading and everything, and like her vocabulary in Spanish is like really like advanced. But then like people automatically like now that like if she like speaks, like they like kind of talk down on her, like treat her like a child in a way, like where they're like saying things kind of in a tone that like makes it known that they're kind of like looking down on you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then that like also like just because I've seen it with my parents, so that like kind of affected them, like their involvement, like how involved they were in like school and things like that, because they were often like embarrassed to like talk to my teachers or things like that, like because they there was that like language barrier.
Yeah, my parent, like, they were involved, but like again, there was kind of a language barrier, and even like kind of like a language disappearance too, because once they started predominantly learning English, it's kind of like they forget like forget words in like their own language. Like for instance, my dad like started letting go of like his Thai or like whatever language he speaks, and same with my mom. Like a lot of words are just forgotten, and I don't want that to happen. Like for instance, if like I choose to have kids in the future, I don't want to like only speak in one language to them. Like I want to have like a plethora of different languages and like different like cultures, because then they would have like they're not going to be like kind of ignorant in a way.
Because if you speak more languages, it's just more people that you can speak to and like share experiences with.
Yeah, just even starting out with like, yeah, like I know a word or two in that language, and like it's just a conversation starter in a way.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like cool, like like this person actually took the time to like get to know a culture rather than like, oh, they don't know anything about me and they're not trying in a way.
Okay, so about 5 years ago, I went to Peru, and there were different groups from all over the US. Every group except mine spoke only English. None of them knew Spanish, except for just kind of able to just get like the necessities, just like where's the restroom, where's this, where's that, but none of them knew Spanish from growing up. In my group, all of my group, our native language was Spanish, and our tour guide obviously was native to Peru, and so he spoke Spanish. So my group and I got along with the tour guide. We talked to him in Spanish and didn't think anything of it. And I guess one night in our hotel, a group of some girls from somewhere in the Midwest, they were talking with, no, I don't think they were talking to my friend, but they were next to and the tour guide. And my friend of the conversation about Peru and, the country and all of that, and for some reason the girl became bothered at the fact that they were speaking Spanish because she couldn't understand it. And it just really showed me how big linguistic supremacy still is in some people's lives.
Yeah.
Because living in California with so many different languages, cultures, and everything, it's not really seen as much. It's still seen.
Yeah.
But it's a lot less common, and you will get called out for that a lot more than in other states. It just shocked me that there's still people. She was my age, so it was like shocking, like 15 years old,
Wow.
to be thinking that your language is superior to somebody else's, and that you're allowed to go into their country and just expect them to assimilate to you. I don't know how to word it, but just for it to just work out for you. And instead of you trying to learn the country, its language, you kind of just expect the country, its language to change for you.
Yeah.
It was crazy to me, that people still had that thinking and were still,
Yeah, someone your age, that is so surprising.
Yeah, as a 15-year-old, I'm like, how can you already think like that?
Yeah, right.
It sounds like something you grow up with, and it's hard to change the older you get.
I would feel so embarrassed.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. I was so glad I wasn't in that conversation because I already had trouble with someone else. So I was like, girl, this would have been the last straw with this group of people.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy to think about. Where I could have just imagined their shocked faces of my friend and the tour guide being told not to talk, in their native language in a country where this is actually their language.
Yeah, every day they speak it.
Country's language, yeah.
They must have flown there or something, or like taken a boat or drove, like they know they're not where they come from.
Yeah, and they know the language they were going to be faced with. They decided to be prepared.
Yeah,
so.
My gosh, it's just horrifying.
Crazy. Yeah.
Thank you for listening, whoever's grading, Dr. Martinez, whatever. Thank you guys so much, TAs, whatever. Thanks for listening. Can end the recording. Bye-bye.